One of the questions that is circulating in the world right now, at least in the circles I'm a part of, is when the crisis created around the coronavirus has settled down, what will normal be like? There are several speculations about many large group gatherings and how we will return to those times of meeting together. Among church leaders and worshipers across our nation and in various parts of the world, there are questions about what church will look like when we are finally together again. In preparation for that time, it is very important for us as followers of Jesus to ask some questions about our practices as Christians. What has stood out to you in this time of no in-person worship as the most important thing about worship? What about the gathered community of faith has stayed the same during this time of sheltering at home? What do you value most about your faith in God? What spiritual practices have you let go of or spent more time on during this time? The portion of Acts that I read this morning describes the practices of the early church that became models for Christians doing faith together. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. They devoted themselves to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and there were many miraculous signs and wonders done by the apostles. They helped each other when in need. They gathered every day in the temple courts and broke bread together in their homes. They ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God. It's no wonder we're suffering in this time of separateness. We're hardwired to be together. The church was formed around being together. When we have been together or had the chance to be together and missed it for something more important at the time, what has strengthened you? What has been life-giving to you? Conversely, what has driven you off track and further away from God in connection with God's people? Many people over the years have developed the habit of showing up once, twice, 3 times a month, or even every week to church and expecting the experience to do something for them. It has become easy to point fingers at preachers, musicians, leaders, Sunday school teachers, and blame them for not enough depth, not challenging one's spirituality enough. There may be some truth to that part of the conversation. But what is also crucial is for each of us to realize and embrace our responsibility in deepening our relationship with God, internally, through devotion to scripture study, to teaching, to prayer, externally, through breaking bread with others, believing in and being part of God's miracles in the world and helping others in need. We can't come to church and soak in what we want and go about our daily living and tune out the parts we don't want to live with. During this time, I've become even more aware of the importance of intentionality and my own personal responsibility for my spiritual connection to God and to others. We need each other. We can't do it alone, but we must be mindful of deepening our own spiritual lives. We began our time together with Psalm 23, a beloved portion of scripture that is familiar to us from early childhood to passage through death to eternity. My 2-year-old grandson Gregory is memorizing the first line. Perhaps there have been days during the past 6 weeks when the image of the valley of the shadow of death has come to mind for you. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. In my prayers this week, I came across Psalm 84, and the image of a dark valley is mentioned there. And I quote, "They are happy whose strength is in you, in whose hearts are the roads or highways to Zion. As they go through the bitter valley, they make it a place of springs. They walk with ever-growing strength. They will see God in Zion." The Voice translation reads like this: "On their way through the valley of Baca, or bitterness, they stop and dig wells to collect the refreshing spring water, and the early rains fill the pools." They journey from place to place, gaining strength along the way until they meet God in Zion. They stop and dig wells to collect the refreshing spring water, and the early rains fill the pools. They stop and take time to dig a well. We need this image now. At least I need this image now. Even from our separate spaces, I believe we are walking a similar journey. By the power of God's Spirit, we are united in spirit. Each of us can dig deeper and be strengthened on this journey. I believe God is calling his followers to decide if their faith is real and vital and crucial to their lives, or just a happy act that happens some Sunday mornings with a group of other people. This time of being apart has brought that question front and center. And as we come together again in future weeks, we would be wise to discern what could change for the better in our gathering and worship practices. I read a portion in a book this week that listed out some characteristics of believers, religious or otherwise. Believers are risk-taking. A believer is someone who buys stock in a promising company, realizing it could go bad at any time. Abraham set out, not knowing where he was going. Believers are hungry for meaning. A believer's hunger for meaning is stronger than their fear of being wrong. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come join you on the water. Believers are open. They're open to the spiritual, the mysterious, the imagined. And after an earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire, a soft whisper. Believers have love for their companions. To the believer, a shared belief isn't joining the herd, it's multiplied pleasure and shared risk. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. And a believer is someone who takes action. They do not simply affirm with the mind some abstract conviction. Rather, a believer is someone who acts on that belief, who allows the belief to shape choices and repeated daily actions. Let us go too, that we may die with him. Risk-taking, with a hunger for meaning, open to mystery and miracles, taking action and doing it all together with others. As we move forward in this experience of coming together as the gathered church, may we be open to taking risks, embracing mystery and miracles, and when needed, stopping along the journey to dig wells and make the way refreshing and deeply satisfying.